the anti-checker.
We will return to your scheduled programming shortly, or we are currently experiencing technical difficulties.
I need to remember to unmute the microphone, so I wasn't gonna bother saying anything until I got it unmuted. Hey everybody, Michael J. Crawford, the anti-tricker here in the anti-cam, sorry about that. There we go, look at Auntie's actually awake. Awake-ish. Good to see you all. And hey, I'm may be a miracle at last. So, the reason for the title of this video, as far as I've been very frustrated with YouTube. I see Auntie is trying to dig a hole in her bed now. I've been very angry with YouTube because the Galaxy Quest Part 4 I had done on Friday night. I put the finishing touches on it Saturday morning, and then I uploaded it. They immediately filed a copyright content ID match on it. So I looked at the part that they said it matched. It's an hour-long video, so I just said screw it. I put a little censored thing over that little 30-second area of the video, re-uploaded it, and got a copyright strike on a different part of the video. So, did the same thing again. I basically put a censored bar over it, just for fun. I put a little silly music, and the Pat Waint guy saying that he was president of Paramount Pictures and he was DMCAing my video. Re-uploaded it again, got another copyright strike. And so all in all, I have uploaded and gotten copyright strikes 5 times yesterday, and it was absolutely driving me crazy. The thing that really pissed me off about it is that you know, each time I had to basically I had to edit that section of the video and then re-render the entire 1-hour video, which takes time. And so basically my entire day yesterday was spent rendering this video over and over and over. And then finally, Mr. Miles, feeling sorry for me, said, you know what? This was when I was getting ready to give up. So Mr. Miles said, hey, you know what, Anti-Tricker, I'll do it. And so I sent him the video files. He did some trimming on it, re-edited, upload, and then he posted on Skype, hey, looks like I got it working for you. You know, no need to thank me, blah, 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 you know, standard stuff. And so I go, really? Very cool. Let me go check that out. So I go to his video, and what does it say? Video unavailable. This video contains content from Paramount Pictures, who has blocked it on copyright grounds. Just, so this morning, got up, re-edited the video one more time, and then started the upload, took Auntie for a walk, and just came back in from taking Auntie for her walk right before I started this live stream. And by the way, I know some people complaining about the hair. I'll get to that in a minute. And this time it looks like they actually did not do a copyright strike. So it looks like when Galaxy Quest Part 4 with 5 censored out sections will be live. So my Patron supporters and subscribers at antitricker.com will be able to see it today, shortly, actually, you know, probably right after this live stream. And then everybody else will be able to see it tomorrow morning. But yeah, that's why I'm a little upset about all that. So I apologize for a long diatribe about YouTube, but their copyright system is a freaking joke. All right, so now let's get to the chat. BIRDOPREY says, Kapla, hey Bird. Bird actually posted before the stream started. However, John, the former peasant, was first once the stream started. Congratulations, John. I am assuming Thomas is elsewhere right now. White Spy gives a live long and prosper. White Spy, where's Black Spy? Any other name, please? Okay, so Fred. says hi. Luke Fovark says, may the theological debate begin. Yes, Luke, we will discuss all sorts of heresies and crap. 47 Yorktown says, not first. Azim says, greetings. Thoris is in the house, says, uh-oh, what has YouTube done now? Well, I already explained that. BIRDOPREY says, guessing the Galaxy Quest review got blocked. You got it. John, the former president, says, Father, forgive YouTube, for they know not what they do. Well, actually, that's the worst thing about it, John, is that YouTube knows exactly what they're doing. Godspeed says, Anti-Checker, hey, man, doing spring cleaning. Wait a minute, Godspeed. Aren't you in Ireland? And so Ireland has no spring, so how can you have spring cleaning? Sorry. Corvo at AZ says, God done did it. Okay. Darren says, what did YouTube do now? I already explained. Stan Lee says, whoa, letting his hair down. Okay, so, and BIRDOPREY says, cut your hair, hippie. Jerk. So here's the deal with the hair. As you guys know, as of late, I've been having, Mrs. Anti-Checker's been braiding it. I think that it's actually looked pretty good like that. As some of you know, Mrs. Anti-Checker has also started feeling a little sick on Friday. Well, she's feeling really sick now. And so because of that, she couldn't do my hair this morning. And so here you go. That's all it is. And Corvo says, dog, stop digging. Yeah, she does that sometimes. But as you can see, now she is to her normal position. And Darren says, God, too much hair. Sorry, Darren. But you know what, Darren? No, here's the thing. You say that, but you have just as much hair on your face as I have on my head. So don't give me that crap. Stan Lee says, nah, keep the hair, just lose the 90s undercut. Oh, you don't like the undercut? Well, I'm sorry, but Mrs. Anti-Checker likes it, and Mrs. Anti-Checker is more important to me. Godspeed says, Anti-Checker, are you taking up special herb? You look like it. Oh, man, I wish that thing that you were mentioning was legal here. I really do, because then the pain would be a lot less. But no. Long hair needs a bit of sideburn. Well, to each their own. Is it because the dog is naked? I'm not sure what you mean, Stanley. Luke says, hey guys, how are you today? I'm hanging in there, Luke. Since Mrs. Anti-Checker's not feeling well, and I was going through all that crap with YouTube yesterday, not in the best of moods, to be honest, but I'm breathing, and that's better than the alternative. Cinnabon is in the house, says hi. Hey, BIRDOPREY says he looks like Data in Independence Day. First of all, that was Dr. Oaken, not Data. You could say Brent Spiner in Independence Day, but, I understand, Bird, that you are dumb. Anyway, Neo-Normie says, live long and prosper. Thank you, my friend. Stanley says, I thought he did this exclusively for the inherent joy and pleasure. You mean YouTube stuff? Well, I do love doing the YouTube stuff, but it's extremely frustrating when YouTube does everything they can to stop you from doing it. John says, I figured it out, Anti-Checker. Is Anti-Checker because he is the inverse of Shatner, no need for toupee? Yeah, you got it, John. That's it. I guess now the secret's out. And Thor says, Nerdrotic did a video about some guy who was copyright ransoming videos on YouTube getting sued. It was all a scam, not the actual copyright owners. Yeah, I heard about that, and I've actually seen that a couple of times. Like, for example, I had a video that had a brief clip from, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember, but a brief clip from some movie, and some dude filed a copyright claim against it who had nothing to do with it. Anti-Checker's shirt is telling us to please cancel our subscriptions. No, it says, please cancel my subscription to your issues, so shut up. Mortimus likes the hair. Thank you, Mortimus. Nice to see that there's someone left that's not a mean person. Darren says, Anti-Checker, Ireland does indeed have spring. Ever hear of Irish Spring soap? Well, that's true. We see to the Irish, spring is a soap. Neo Normie says, Andrew, I once got all the sound removed from a game stream because I was drunk and I started singing Queen and Village People songs, YouTube copyright, even though it had no music. You see, and that's the thing. That is so freaking stupid. Because if granted, I'm not going to, but if I started singing Queen songs right now, and how in any way, shape, or form would that affect Queen? It doesn't, right? My singing a Queen song on a live stream does not hurt them. And if anything, it might get people saying, ooh, what's that song? And I could tell them about how awesome Queen is, and then go out and buy a record, or sorry, a CD or MP3 or whatever the kids are buying these days. DJ says, pause the show. I still have 7 minutes to watch on Bird Stream.
I got him! Great kid! Don't get cocky.
Sorry about the delay there, but thank you, Mexican Iron Man. I'll get to your chat in just a second. But it says, please pause the show. I have 7 minutes left. All right. Well, DJ, I see you just posted again, so you're obviously not watching Bird's Chair Live, so screw it. I'm not going to wait. Okay, you're on today, but you're late. Better late than never. Yeah, Richie, sorry. I did have to take Andy for a walk, plus I was trying to get that video situation fixed with Galaxy Quest, and it looks like I finally got it. And then, let's see. Stanley says, long hair needs some burns. I agree to disagree on that. Darren says, you pull off nerdy Klingon quite well, actually. Well, thank you. Kapla! Antrigger, tell Darren I can't tag Irish Spring soap is not available for sale in Ireland. We do have spring. The rain gets less hot. Oh, okay. So that's what you call spring, is less hot rain. Sounds like a dream come true. Actually, to be honest with you, I would love to. I'll bet you that whenever me and Mrs. Antricker get over to your side of the planet, we're going to probably love the weather there. You need a tashi and a stick so you can be a servant of the sacred fire and kill rocks. YouTube posting issues, dog naked, bad joke. You should have quit while I was on the head. Antricker saw a documentary that theories about. Is that Tutankhamun that you're trying to write, or that his father was Moses? I hadn't heard that one. I did hear one that I really thought was interesting, which was that Imhotep was actually Joseph, if I remember correctly. Not Joseph, father of Jesus, but Joseph in the coat of many colors. If I remember correctly. Mexican Iron Man puts $5 into the chat. Thank you so much, Mexican Iron Man. And I love that username because I've tried to picture what Mexican Iron Man would look like. Good morning. Been absent 2 weeks, and I am back. Here is a sponsorship for coffee for the morning. Your hair looks like Highlander. Thank you. I think, assuming that's a compliment. I am of Scottish ancestry. But to compare me to a Scotsman being played by a Frenchman when a Scotsman was playing a Spaniard in the same movie, DJ says, your bad singing may hurt Queen. Might make people avoid the group. Well, that's true. Richie says he calls himself the Anti-Trigger because he hates Star Trek. Just kidding, Anti-Trigger. Just trying to get you to tell us the real reason. Well, we're getting close. We're pushing 9,000 subs. Once we get to 10,000, I will reveal the big secret. Not that it's really that exciting. Godspeed says, Andrew, if you start singing, your subscriber count drops to 0. You get divorce papers and ASPCA call to your house. Wow. Really? Really? Look, I know I'm not, I'm no Frank Sinatra, but I can at least carry a tune. So I'm not BIRDOPREY or Lyra Reloaded type singing, but I get how you are. I was done with Bird Stream by the time you got to my comment. Okay, TJ. Valor says, a funny event happened yesterday. A couple of missionaries showed up while I was watching one of your older live streams, and Naked Lore showed up just as they came in. The look on their faces. Oh, man, that would be classic. I would love to see that. Richie's laughing at DJ. John says, ain't tricking new channel name, Rapunzel of Starfleet. Darren says, Joseph, husband of Mary, not father of Jesus. Darren, Joseph was Jesus's father. He just wasn't his biological father. Mexican Iron Man says, you are immortal. There can be only one. You look like Borellian Norman from the original Battlestar Galactica. Now, wait, who? Wow, why am I not? That's not clicking. And I love the original Battlestar Galactica, but for some reason that's not clicking. So now I have to do a Google search for that name so that I can refresh my memory here. Really? Really? You think that's what I look like? You jerk. And for those of you that don't know, he was basically a caveman. I mean, this is like before the caveman Geico commercials, there was this guy. So thanks. Peter says, afternoon. Hey, Peter. Neonormal says, Antchecker, on the Discord, I made a suggestion for an animation, have the USS Discovery destroyed by the most badass Doctor Who villain from Pyramids of Mars, Circa the Destroyer, voiced by Gabriel Wolf. Well, did you send it to the Scarved Insect? Because he's the one that does all the Super Chat animations. Although right now he is working on a Feces and Lorehead video featuring BIRDOPREY 5. Idea, epic sing-off, Bird versus Lore versus Anti. Well, that would be unfair. Because like I said a few minutes ago, I can actually carry a tune. No offense to my friend Bird or my friend Lore, but I can carry a tune. And Peter says, I was really tired on Wednesday, and Trigger, that's why I missed out. No worries, my friend. Commander Strand is in the house. How you doing? DJ says hi to Commander. John DeMarco says greetings. Hey, John. Peter says, but much more rested now. That is good. You know what? Sometimes we just need some rest, honestly. But yeah, I feel like I need a nap, and I just got up. Do Kurogans act as the inspiration for the Orville's Mocklins? Funny story, Mr. Captain. Yes, in fact, the Mocklins that is, in fact, Kurogan society. Most people don't realize the reason BIRDOPREY actually calls himself BIRDOPREY is not because of the Klingon reference to their ship. It's because Bird, with his mate Joe, actually laid an egg. He is a bird. Because Mocklins are actually birds. That's something people don't realize. With your hair down, you look like a smooth-headed Klingon from Enterprise after the augment virus. I'm not sure how to take that, my friend, but yes. Although that's one of the reasons I want to get like a Klingon uniform, because I think wearing this with a Klingon uniform would be cool. It's so easy. An anti-tricker can do it. Oh, that's just great, man. I love those caveman commercials were the best. I wish they had never gotten rid of it. And I gotta say, when they did the big contest winner thing and they had all the Geico mascots, the way they handled the caveman in that was brilliant. I want the frickin' caveman back. And for those that didn't see it, they actually did a caveman television series for a very brief time. And it was hilarious the way they actually did some serious social commentary substituting cavemen for every form of discrimination. And it was actually really well done. I really, really enjoyed it, but unfortunately it didn't last. Let's see. Antioch, what happened to the people outside of the Middle East who never heard of God or Jesus when they died? What would happen, like good people who beloved or committed sacrifice? I'm not sure what you mean about the committed sacrifice part, But as far as this, this is what I personally believe, and I think that if you study the Bible, it's one of those things that the Bible doesn't address head on. It would be nice if it did, but I think that it's kind of implied throughout the scriptures, which is that I do not believe for a moment that you go to hell because you are ignorant. All right. I think that going to hell is something that, and we all know that well, you should know if you've ever read the Bible, that the way you go to hell is to reject Christ. Now, what if you'd never heard of him? Well, what the Bible does say about it is that if you seek, you will find. And it doesn't necessarily say when, and it doesn't necessarily say how. And I do believe that it is entirely possible that someone who has never heard or never gotten any kind of formal education on Christ or any of that could in fact be saved, but they just didn't know. They knew that there was something out there. They didn't know what its name was. However, they were seeking the truth and trying to live the way that God wants us to live. And honestly, what Christ said in the New Testament is that what you need to do is very simple. Number 1, love God. Number 2, love your fellow man. Number 3, see number 1 and number 2. And honestly, that's what it's all about. So that's my thoughts on that. Let's see. The look at really, you're a closet Batman 1966 villain, King Tut. I remember King Tut. And that was not a compliment. BIRDOPREY 5 has a very unique singing style. That is true. Commander Strand says, hello, DJ and John, because Commander Strand doesn't care about the rest of us, just DJ and John. Because Commander Strand, you're a jerk. Valor says, Antricker, they stayed, but instead of trying to get me back into the fold, we watched the rest of the stream. I was trying to convert them to the religion of the poo. Yeah. Oh, man, you should have, if only you had recorded that. Godspeed says, Antricker, I searched men become on YouTube, and it came up men become women. Of course. What do you expect? Peter says, should see me with my hair down. Well, do a live stream, take your hair down. DJ says, well, at least I didn't compare you to cavemen. That's true. Human sacrifice. Well, I would dare say that, yeah, if you were following some kind of pagan religion and all that, I would say that, yeah, there's probably some problems there. Mr. Captain says, you walk into a room and see Laura and Bird in medical distress, and you absolutely need to give one mouth to mouth to save the world. Who would you lock lips with? The world would end. I already live in hell. It's called Illinois. I thought it was Scranton. That's what I always heard, was Scranton, Pennsylvania was hell. Godspeed says, Antrick, but I hate everyone. Well, then you need to fix that, my friend. I know you're kidding, but seriously, people, one thing that, and this is why I find groups like the Westboro Baptist Church and other Christian hate groups so ironic, because the number one thing you're supposed to do is to love God. The number 2 thing you're supposed to do is love your fellow man. And if you're a hate group, that is the very opposite of loving your fellow man. And so I would dare say that those people are, if I had to make the judgment call, I would say that they are not going upstairs. Sorry. If you know what I mean. And let's see here. Neo Normie says, have you heard the crazy claim by con man Jim Baker that if Trump doesn't win in 2020, all the American Christians will drop dead? BS or not? Well, I would say that's definitely BS, but really, did Jim Baker actually say that? Because that's surprising that anyone would say something that out there. I mean, that's just nuts. Although, granted, these televangelist types, I mean, they've said things like, God's going to kill me if I don't make $1 million. God wants me to have another Learjet. You know, all this crap that is absolute and complete lies. And those people, I'll tell you, those types of people, the televangelists that are actually saying crap like that, I truly hope that they are atheists. Because I don't know how you could be a Christian and say those things and have anything even close to a clear conscience. But yeah, that is freaking nuts, Neil. Mr. Cotton says, how do you think religion would work if alien life came to Earth? I honestly, you know what, for me at least, it wouldn't make a lick of difference. Now, for some people, it might create a little bit of a problem, but I think that if anything, the arrival of extraterrestrials would, that doesn't, here's the one thing you got to understand. The existence of God has absolutely nothing to do with the number of sentient species in the universe, right? God could have created just humans, or he could have created 18 billion sentient species across the universe. Don't know. And so, to me, it doesn't change my faith one bit. If an alien landed today and said, greetings, Earthlings, you know, I'd be like, oh, cool. However, depending on, for some people, that would create a little bit of a problem. For example, and I'm going to pick on my good friend Darren for a second. Darren is a flat earther. If there were aliens coming down to our planet and they could confirm that the Earth is indeed a sphere, that would kind of mess with Darren's stuff a little bit. But I don't think Darren would lose faith. I think he would just adjust to there being a spheroid Earth as opposed to a flat Earth. Same thing with, for example, I know there's a few people on that are subscribers of this channel that are young Earth creationists, right? And a young Earth creationist, that's just a fancy way of saying that they take the age of the Earth based on a literal interpretation of Genesis. And what that means is that basically if you look at the first couple of chapters in Genesis, there's the creation story. And you look at Adam and Eve were the first people. They were created on the 6th day that Earth existed, assuming all that is literal. As opposed to like some people believe that the days are actually long periods of time. And some people think that Genesis in and of itself is entirely a parable as opposed to a historical tale. But if the if you take a literal interpretation, you say, okay, so you know, Adam lived for 800 years, and then this person was born, they lived for 600 years, and so on. And so then they could calculate that the age of the Earth is somewhere around 5,000 years or something. And so that makes a person a young Earth creationist. They believe the Earth was literally created pretty much as it is today 5,000 years ago. Now, people with those types of beliefs would have to adjust. However, I don't necessarily think, and Darren, I would love to hear your opinion on this. I don't think that Darren would suddenly become an atheist. I think that he would simply adjust his flat Earth philosophy. Was it Oral Roberts who had to have a private jet because he couldn't hear God when he was on a commercial flight? It might have been Oral Roberts, but I get them mixed up. Jim Baker, Oral Roberts, there were so many charlatans on TV. Anti-Drucker, Happer meals for homeless for a few times. I'm not sure what you mean, Godspeed. Oh, he said, I give a lot of charity every Christmas, especially toys for kids, clothes for adults, toiletries for women. My cuz hands them out. I don't trust charities. I prefer to do it myself. I have bought Happy Meals for homeless a few times. That's cool, Godspeed. And you know what? I understand if you don't trust your local charities and stuff. I would suggest, and I know you're a Catholic, so it works a little differently, but like, for example, our church, you know, the one that's on the screen behind me, we help out people in our local community, and our church actually vets our local nonprofits, sees what they're doing, and so that they can vouch for them. And so that's something I really like. So they can say, no, this is exactly what they're doing. This is how they're spending their money. They say that alien invasion is our only chance for unity. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a physical impossibility. Stan, I don't understand why you would think that's a physical impossibility. An alien invasion is a physical impossibility? Why? Peter says, I like that TNG episode entry, the Cedars, the Preservers. Well, I remember, okay, so I get the TNG side of it mixed up. I remember in the original series, Paradise Syndrome, they talked about the Preservers. The obelisk of the Preservers is what saved Miramani's planet. And the concept was there was this ancient race that was seeding humanoids all around the galaxy, which is the official explanation in Trek as to why there are so many humanoid races, which of course for some reason they forgot about in Star Trek Discovery. Darren says, I would call such an alien visit a hoax. But what if, Darren, let's say the aliens landed on your front lawn, assuming you have a front lawn, and they took you onto their ship, convinced you that it was real, they lifted you into space, you could see the spheroid Earth, and then they brought you back down. Stanley says, yeah, 7,000 years ago, and humans lived alongside dinosaurs like on the Flintstones. Well, here's the thing, Stan. I'm not going to mock their beliefs. They have explanations for all of that, and that's fine. I personally think that as far as if you look at the evidence available, it points to an older Earth. That being said, I actually don't care. That's the funny thing, is that I genuinely don't think it's an important thing. It's remember, like we say, our philosophy at our church is major on the major, minor on the minors. That is, if it's not important enough to be a salvation issue, it's not worth making a big stink over, right? And I don't believe for one moment that the age of the Earth, or the shape of the Earth for that matter, is a salvation issue. I don't think that if, for example, the fact that Darren believes that there's a flat Earth, or the fact that someone else might believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old, I can disagree with them, and yet all three of us could go to heaven, right? I don't think that God's going to say, ha, you were wrong about the age of the Earth. That's not how it works. Because what did I say earlier? What you need to do is love God and love your fellow man. And whether or not you think the Earth is 5,000 years old or 14 billion years old has nothing to do with whether or not you love God and love man. It's just your opinion on certain historical facts. Now, Rock Solid says, don't forget, smash the like button, share via social, set chat to live. Don't forget to turn the mic and camera on before streaming. Donate if you can, and down with YouTube censorship and Kuroga. Now that's the best one you've said all year, Rock Solid. Godspeed says, I don't believe the creation story is literal. I tend not to either, but I don't begrudge people that do. That's the thing. If you look at the creation story of the book of Genesis, it is very much, first of all, it's written in a poetic format, right? I've yet to see a historical text that was written as poetry. And so this was written like a poem. And in fact, it was stanzas and rhymes and all that. Not only that, but then you get into the term yom. Yom is the Hebrew term that is used for the word day in the Genesis week. So at the end of each stanza of the poem, it says, and there was night and there was morning, the second day, the third day, the fourth day. The word for day is yom, Y-O-M. And why is that important? Because yom does not, in fact, mean literally a 24-hour day. Yom, like many words, has multiple definitions. One of them is a 24-hour day, meaning, one cycle of the Earth's rotation, or if you're Darren, one cycle of the sun's path around the earth. However, the term yom also means a 12-hour day, meaning from sunrise to sunset. That's another meaning of it. Because remember that the Jews measure, like, for example, the Sabbath, which is, their holy days. Saturday we think of as the Sabbath. But the Sabbath actually starts on Friday night at sunset, right? And then ends on Saturday night at sunset. And so you can measure days in different ways. But then there's also the term yom also refers to day as in an age, like an epoch, right? And so, for example, in assuming we're not arguing about, a 5,000-year-old Earth, then you could say the day of the dinosaur. Well, obviously, I'm not referring to a single day that the dinosaurs existed. I'm referring to a period of time that happened some 65 million years ago when dinosaurs roamed the Earth. So day can mean an age or an epoch, a long, extensive period of time. It doesn't necessarily mean a 24-hour day or a 12-hour day. So that's actually, so the interesting thing about that is that word is a little more fluid than most people realize. And so if the first day, second day, third day, etc. of Genesis were actually representative of ages or epochs, then the 14 billion years could be right there. And no conflict whatsoever, except that people, unfortunately, want to argue over a literal interpretation of an English translation of an ancient Hebrew document. So let's get back to it. I don't believe the creation story. I just read that. Yes, Godspeed. I just went on. Like on The Expanse, says Stan Lee. Not sure what you mean there. The Mormons built a spaceship to find their true home or something. Well, in The Expanse, yes, that is true. Well, they didn't say their true home. It's like they're trying to find paradise, I think, something like that. Neil Normie says, I'm no longer religious, but I do like the idea of a simulation so that when I die, game over sign appears in Red Dwarf or Rick and Morty. Well, the simulation argument is an interesting one because technically speaking, if it is possible to create sentient programs that can experience a life in a simulation, that at that moment, if that is possible, then eventually that will happen. If that eventually happens, then it is in fact more likely that we are existing in a simulation right now than we are in the quote-unquote real world. The reason being is that there is only one real world and probably billions, if not trillions, of simulations. Let's see. Darren will start leaving in the rubber tree, people. I'm not sure what you mean there, Trek Reviewer. Stanley says it's song lyrics. The Genesis story, yes. In a way, you're very right. The guy who runs the program is a priest, god, man, straight as a round, but he works hard, and everyone wears a little badge and the number you can call. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Godspeed. You kind of lost me there. Don't worry, I'm happy to mock, says Stanley, of course. Exactly. Not that it matters. Believe what you like. Well, that's the thing. I don't care. Yeah, if you want to believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old, or you want to believe the Earth is flat, or you want to believe in all sorts of stuff that's not salvation specific, I don't care. That's perfectly fine. And we can have that discussion. I've had discussions with Darren in the past about it. I don't have a problem with any of that. What I have a problem with is when, and I have seen this, is when people try to take these minor issues and say, you're going to hell because you disagree with me. Then I have a problem. Neil Normie says, there was a BBC series in the late 90s called Invasion Earth, and it had the more frightening idea of aliens harvesting humanity, viewing us like we look at fruit or fish. Well, actually, the funny thing is that's extremely unlikely. And I was actually, the funny thing is that, first of all, there would be no war of the worlds if hostile aliens actually showed up on Earth. Why? Because they would annihilate us. right? It would not. We would not have a chance. They would probably annihilate us from orbit, and we would never even know what was going on. However, then you run into the problem of they're not going to show up to eat us or to take our natural resources, and unless, and this is an interesting hypothesis. I think this came from, I can't remember whether it was Neil deGrasse Tyson or Michio Kaku. I think it was one of them though. But the only way the aliens could possibly come and want to either harvest us or the Earth would be if we were actually related. If some form of panspermia were true and we were from the same basic original life source. The reason for that is that if we evolved completely independently on Earth and say on Antares 5 or wherever the aliens are from, then their DNA is not going to be compatible with ours in any way, shape, or form, assuming they even have DNA. It could be something totally different. And so because of that, they would be unable to digest anything from Earth. The reason that we can eat animals and plants on Earth is because of our shared DNA. The pattern is the same. We're made of the same basic building blocks, and thus we can refuel ourselves by consuming the others. But it doesn't work that way if you're completely incompatible. It would be like you trying to eat a rock. It just won't work. Darren says, extra-dimensional aliens are fine. If they supposedly took me up, I would consider it a deception. Darren. But I said, what if they actually did convince you? Well, the Martians in War of the Worlds were inspired by the genocide of the Tasmanian Aboriginals. Yes, but you see, that's another. But the problem is the Martians of the War of the Worlds got sick from viruses on Earth, and unless they had compatible DNA with humans, an Earth-bound virus would have zero effect on them. Peter says, there's a pic of me with my hair down. Okay. Are you saying you sent me a pic? Okay, on Discord, yeah. I was like, okay, that's kind of random, just to letting me know that there are pics of you with your hair down. Yeah, your hair is longer than mine. Dang, Peter. Let's see if I can get this to where... Can I zoom in on it? Yeah. And so we go there. There is Darren with his hair down. Yeah, that's some serious hair, Peter. You definitely got me beat. Although my hair is also curly, yours is straight, so that could be part of why yours looks longer than mine. And you also obviously don't have to lose a bunch of weight like me, you jerk. Yes, simulation. Who's to say we ain't the Sims? Exactly. Something like that, yeah, point where they adjusted their beliefs as technology progressed. Yeah, and I don't have a problem with making adjustments, and that's a problem in the church right now, is that the church, the church gets confused. This is a real problem in the church. You hear things like, oh, God doesn't change. The truth about God doesn't change. That's the same no matter what. That's true, right? But our understanding of God can change, because we are not omniscient, omnipotent beings, and so we can't actually see, what's the big picture of the universe, right? And we can only see a very small part of it, and we can interpret the Bible and then be wrong about that interpretation, and that's perfectly okay as long as we're willing to admit it. But the church is unwilling to admit it. The church says, no, this is the truth, and you cannot debate. And for example, there are churches that very dogmatically will say that the earth was created in 6 days, 6,000 years ago, right? And if you dare try to challenge that, you're a heretic, you're a blasphemer, and all that crap. But the problem is that I'm not saying that what the Bible says is untrue. I'm saying that your interpretation of it is incorrect. And there's a difference between those two. If I was saying that the Bible is untrue, then you would be correct in calling me a blasphemer. But I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that maybe your interpretation is a little bit off. And let's have that discussion. Not let's say, oh, well, the Bible's wrong. No, let's say, well, are you sure that this means 6 literal days? Because let's break down the Hebrew and all that, and it could have other meanings. Antraker, what if an alien landed and said they were the original owners of Earth and want it back? What happens? I would say, fine, no problem. Send me to Alpha Centauri. I'll be more than happy to move. We can't prove much of ancient history anyway, so most arguments are just based on emotion or conjecture. That's unfortunately true. Antraker, would you debate an a-hole street preacher? I have in the past. And I probably would. Probably not on YouTube because I feel like keeping my channel. Darren says, if I remember correctly, we had one discussion about it. It was way too brief. Well, Darren, actually, I think we talked about it twice. But you understand what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with you holding that belief. Otherwise, we would not be friends. On V, they wanted to eat us. Yes, but V was a TV show. Vacuum up our fresh air, steal all our water. Yeah, I know. But the thing is that if life evolved completely independently of life on Earth, none of that would make sense. Aliens passing Earth, intercepting a bird of prey stream. No intelligent life down there. Peter says there is transfermia to trigger. It is possible that microbes came from another star system to seed our soul. Yes, panspermia is actually the term that I've heard for it. But yes, and that is a possibility, but it's a very remote one. To be honest with you, I mean, I like it's kind of fun to speculate about the idea. However, it's very difficult to find microbes that would fill the requirements to be the seed that became all life on Earth, and also be able to survive impact with Earth on an asteroid or a meteor. There are very few things that could actually survive. That would be like, oh yeah, all you have to do is find a microbe that can survive a nuclear blast, and then you got it. And if that were the case, if you had microbes that seeded all life that could survive those kind of extreme conditions, why is it that there are almost no life forms that could survive those kind of conditions today? I see a debate between Bill Nye versus creationists, and Bill asked creationist questions, and instead of answering them, he deflected with the Bible. Well, that's an unfortunate thing. But that's the problem. Is that when you're debating with a fundamentalist creationist Christian, they don't have science on their side. But they believe that the Bible is on their side. So what they will do is simply quote the Bible. Now, and here's the thing. It's not that they're necessarily doing the wrong thing, but we have two incompatible sources, right? We have one person, like Bill Nye, is a scientist. So he's obviously going to make all of his arguments based on what he considers scientific fact, where the creationist is a creationist. So he's going to base his arguments off of what he considers biblical fact. And that's the end of the debate, because there's no common ground. That's the big problem with those types of debates. You have to have a common ground to have a real debate. That's why I don't argue with atheists generally about whether or not this verse in the Bible means this, or whether or not Christianity is better than Islam and crap like that. Because we have no common ground there. Because I can go by what the Bible says, but the atheist rejects the Bible out of hand. And so we have no common ground to work from. The only thing I will debate with an atheist on is the existence of God, because that's where we have a fundamental disagreement. Because you can't. That's like trying to say, oh well, I don't believe that trains exist. Now you tell me why you think a steam engine is better than a diesel. It makes no sense. Darren says, I reject the premise they wouldn't be able to convince me. Well, in that case, Darren, I feel sorry for you. Because, you know what? I am fully willing to be convinced that I am wrong about anything. Unless they remove the incompatible DNA and it turns us into canned soup. Well, that's possible. Cinnabon says, people eat those. Oh, you're talking about the Tums. Yeah, Tums are rocks. People eat those. Humans are alien antacids. Well, that's an interesting way to put it, Cinnabon. So maybe, I am Lur, and I have a tummy ache. Give me some human horn. Peter says, nut, otherwise the life on Earth and the solar system are closeted systems. I'm not sure what you mean there, Peter. And then you said ant. Ant, otherwise life on Earth. Peter, I'm not sure. Yeah, a bit warm here, Ant Checker. Nope. High metabolism and nope. And not underweight. Well, I didn't say you were underweight. I'm just saying you're not fat like me. What if aliens were like predators or Herodin were hunting-based culture, so it's good that you don't have English accent, or with the hair, I'd get battlefield Earth flashbacks. Actually, you know, that would be a greater danger than them wanting to eat us, would be something like Predator, where they just wanted to hunt us. However, the nice thing about that is that they wouldn't hunt us all, so that's good. Hummus is something very different on Antares 5. I'm sure it is. When the doors of perception are cleansed, things will appear as they truly are, infinite. But I disagree with you fundamentally on one part of that statement, Stan, and that is that there is no such thing as infinite. Okay, have to run, work, ugh, have fun. All right, DJ, take care. Fed is in the house. Good to see you, Fed. Haven't seen you in a little while. Hey, Enter, just popping in. You're going Klingon now? No, I've always been Klingon. I'm just coming out of the, I don't know what the Klingon word for closet is. Neil Normie says, have you visited Ken Ham's Ark exhibit, as it already got wet, rot, and leaks when it rains? I have not visited Ken Ham's art exhibit. I have talked to Ken Ham, but I've never been to his exhibit. Darren says, it was once. We Skyped only once. Voice mode. I thought it was twice, but maybe you're right, Darren. I'm sorry. I know I've been so with the craziness these last few months with my back and stuff. I'm sorry we haven't gotten to talk more. I'm hoping that if things get better soon, I do want to talk to you again about that. Trek Reviewer says, hail DJ, for some reason. Sorry, recently watched Spaceballs, giant space maid. That's okay. That's okay. You know, I still think Spaceballs was a pale parody in comparison to Galaxy Quest. Tardigrades spread panspermia through the spore network. Well, those water bears, tardigrades, are pretty handy. Well, they are, but you know what? I don't know, and I know that they're hardy little fellas, but I don't know that they would survive being on a meteor impacting with a planet. That's a pretty tall order. Now, I don't know, maybe it's possible, but I don't claim to be a scientist. But if, you know, I just find it unlikely because you have people like to talk about the unlikeliness of God, but they're perfectly willing to entertain the idea that somehow microbes ended up on a rock that ended up in space, that traveled for millions of years and impacted with another planet, and those microbes survived and created all life. That's perfectly reasonable. But the existence of God, no, that's not reasonable. Rock Salt says, what if the original author of the Bible was dyslexic and we're really supposed to worship dogs? Asking for a friend. I'm a good Catholic, meaning I go to church on Christmas, Easter, weddings, and funerals. Actually, first of all, that wouldn't work because God is not spelled G-O-D in Greek or Hebrew, and dog is not spelled D-O-G in Greek or Hebrew. But that's a funny idea, but that would only work if the Bible was originally written in English, and it's not. They worship cats in Egypt. Very true. Bill Nye isn't a scientist, he's an engineer. Okay, well, first of all, engineering is a form of science, but fine. But even so, Bill Nye uses scientific argument. And that's why he's called Bill Nye the Science Guy. He's not called Bill Nye the Engineering Guy. And I understand that's a persona and all that, but my point still stands. He makes science-based arguments. Arguing with a creationist who's going to only use biblical-based arguments, there's no compatibility. There's no discussion to be had. That's the problem. Cats have glowing eyes, so they were mistaken for Goa'uld, I guess. Actually, so Auntie, it's funny because Auntie's eyes glow green if the lighting is right. Holy Moses, hey Trigger, there are turds and nerds. Okay. Science, philosophy, and religion are merely different languages describing the same thing. Agreed. I actually agree with that 100%. In fact, science, the primary purpose of science is to explain how the universe works, where the primary purpose of philosophy and religion is really falls into the philosophical part of it, is why the universe works. But they're, and so those, you can answer one without answering the other. An atheist can still agree part of the Bible is based on real historical events. It's like the supernatural parts of it that an atheist would question. Right, but the problem is that's still, if you're going to base an argument on, you're going to talk about like, okay, what about Jesus? For example, one thing that atheists like to point out is Jesus's genealogy is different in 2 of the books, right? Well, what difference does that make? You reject the whole thing. Neo Normie says, Andrew, the best Christian versus atheist debate for me was Chris Lean Hedges versus Sam Harris, and Harris is pretty much flattened. I haven't seen that one. Okay, I'm out. You can feel sorry for me. I guess it's my loss, right? What do you mean I'm not feel sorry for you? Why? But anyway, have a good one though, Darren. If you're taking off, Darren, I do hope you have a great day. Life on Earth and possibly the solar system are closed, Anti-Tracker. Closed system for life. Okay. I am here. I am driving. So just listening. I do like Klingon Highlander hair. Well, thank you, Alex. Icha. I have no idea what that means. Luke throws €5 into the chat. Thank you so much, Luke. I do truly appreciate it. It says, if aliens ever come here for something, it will just be for Earth itself. They'll come, glass all life, and start over with their own biosphere. I tend to agree with you on that one, Luke. I think that if the Earth's position around the sun is what they're after and they just want it for a strategic location, then yeah, you just glass the planet and start from scratch. And UBERCHAT number 3, you got it.
Dad, do you think you could start eating healthier? Well, I got this apple for you here.
I don't care, you.
My, how the tables have turned.
What tables? Go make me another super chat.
Oh, bollocks.
Yes. And thank you, Luke. I do truly, truly appreciate it. Valor says Ham said he would never change his beliefs even if he was 100% undeniable evidence. However, Bill said he would change his views if there was 100% evidence to back Ham's claims. Well, and that's a problem with dogmatism. That is, and I think that's why Darren was saying I feel sorry for him, because I didn't like that he was saying he couldn't be convinced. I don't, and don't get me wrong. Obviously, like, I think Darren's a great guy, and there are plenty of people that are dogmatic that I think are great people, but I think it is a mistake to be dogmatic about pretty much anything. If you are unwilling to be corrected, then you are not seeking the truth. You're simply seeking validation of your opinion. And so I fully expect, in fact, I know for a fact that I'm wrong on certain things when it comes to theology, right? I absolutely believe that God exists. However, I'm not going to sit there and say that I understand the Bible cover to cover perfectly and therefore I've got it all figured out. No, anybody who says that is a dangerous individual. And that's where we get some of these dogmatic beliefs. And some of them are completely the opposite of what the Bible says. And it just blows, the whole idea of being open-minded, which is so funny because you hear like the Hollywood progressives talk about how you need to be open-minded. Well, they need to be open-minded too. They need to stop rejecting out of hand anything they disagree with. Instead, you listen to what the other person is saying and you try to find what's good about it. And because you know what? Every perspective, every philosophy, every ideology has some good in it, and you should try to find it and find some common ground and then work from there. But yes. Wesley says the hair. Wow, the hair is down. Yes, Wesley. It's a long story, but yes, the hair is down. BIRDOPREY says Space Engineers Service seems to be rebooting. Got kicked off. Well, that sucks. Hopefully it gets back on soon. Peter says they can survive a meteor strike. If you're talking about the tardigrades, all right. So can a tardigrade survive in vacuum conditions for millions of years? Because that's what it would take. And I know they can survive for brief times in space. I know they are extremely hardy little guys, but millions of years floating between two solar systems, because it would take millions of years for a meteor to get from one solar system to another. And even then, you're assuming that it's the closest possible solar system. What if they're from the other side of the galaxy? They could have been floating out there for billions of years. And and we can't even get anything to last, like as far as like trying to freeze dry food and stuff like that. And for astronauts, we can't get anything to last more than 2 years. So, and still retain nutritional value. How are you going to keep a life form alive for billions of years with no food source and just drifting in space? Now, you can argue that they might go into some kind of hibernation, but even then, they would decay over that kind of period of time. We've seen it. So I don't know. Neo Normie says the best Star Wars parody is Ice Pirates. You should review. I don't think I've seen Ice. I remember Space Hunter, but I don't think I saw Ice Pirates. Maybe Spaceballs is more parody and Galaxy Quest is more satire. No, they're both parody. I just think the Galaxy Quest is better written, and Galaxy Quest, I think, comes from the perspective of love. The people that wrote Galaxy Quest, you could tell, loved Star Trek. And Mel Brooks, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Mel Brooks by any stretch, but Spaceballs feels like Mel Brooks looking at Star Wars and saying, this is stupid. And so he made a movie about how stupid Star Wars is. It does not come from, I love Star Wars, let's poke some fun at it. This comes from the perspective of, man, I can't believe people actually pay money to see Star Wars. Let's show them how stupid they are. Anyway, Stanley then says, traveled in a vacuum. Yeah. Cinnabon says, BIRDOPREY, me too, I'm looking at it now. Okay, yeah, let us know what's going on with the server, Cinnabon. But there's still always the question, where did the space microbes come from then? Well, yeah, that just pushes it back a little bit as far as, what is the true biogenesis. And that's actually the ultimate question. If you could answer that, then, boy, that would change the debate. Because right now, when creationists and atheists go into debate, it usually ends up being about that, right? And the problem is that, and this is, there's a few deflections that happen. On the one hand, the creationists will start pointing out the fact that science does not have they say, oh, they think their evolution is so great, but they can't explain how life got started in the first place. And then the person who's arguing from a scientific perspective will say, well, actually, that has nothing to do with evolution. Evolution is about the diversity of life. It's not about the creation of life. So what? That's just dodging the question. The question is, without God, how did life start? Not, hey, which scientific discipline should that cover? And so that's a dodge that atheists do all the time. Now, I'm not saying that the creationists don't have all their dodges, right? Where when they try to point at scientific fact, they just point to some Bible verse and they say, see, that proves it. But that's just as much of a dodge where they're saying, oh, yeah, well, that's not part of evolution, so I don't have to answer that. Chrono says, Anti-Trigger, say, do you doubt me? Okay. Do you doubt me? Cats has lasers from their eyes. That's why they're called laser cats. To be fair, there have been people who worship dogs. Yes, those people are called crazy. Anti-Trigger, doesn't multiple gods make more sense than one god with all the angels? It's like, it's what I like about the Greek and Egyptian pantheon. No, actually, in my opinion, Neo Normie, if you look at it from a theological perspective, I think that monotheism is the only version that really works. And Yosef, thank you so much. Puts a couple of euros into the chat. I'll get to your comment in just a second, my friend. I know I'm a few minutes behind, but we're having some good talk here. Anyway, so I think that monotheism is the only form of theism that truly works. Now, don't get me wrong. There can be multiple levels of critters in the universe that are, like angels and demons and all that crap. But as far as gods are concerned, there can, as the Highlander would say, there can be only one. And the reason is that you can only have one creator. You have to buy, it's just like when we talk about, when people argue about evolution, eventually it goes back to a singular point. Life had to begin somewhere from a singular point. The universe with the Big Bang had to begin from a singular point. There is only one source. Then you spread out. And so angels and all that stuff are, they're just God's creations, right? So and if God could create the universe, God could certainly create angels. And really, if you look at what is an angel, well, an angel is simply a being that does God's bidding for him. So anyway, you will feed me, human slave, before I zap you. Okay. Wesley says, Bill Nye doesn't use scientific engagements. He lies or changes things to fit his narrative. Well, I'm not trying to discredit Bill Nye or give him credence. I'm just saying that he bases his arguments off of scientific ideas as opposed to biblical ideas. And that's why it's an incompatible debate. Then, could it not be said that religion versus science is simply a forced argument? Two things which are not technically in conflict being forced into conflict due to the modern mentality. That is almost perfectly stated, the Fed. That is indeed 100% correct. Science and scripture are not in conflict, but people want them to be. And I'm sorry, this is one that I'm going to have to throw at the atheists. The atheists are the ones that want there to be a conflict. Why? Because if science can disprove scripture, then they win. That's the way they think of it. But the best that you can do with science is to disprove a particular interpretation of events, not necessarily disprove the idea of God. And Peter says, there can be only one. Yes. Luke, and by the way, I can't do that with a proper French accent. You should say that, Luke. Luke says, disagree here. Religions don't explain why the universe exists and works either. They just say it's God's making. That's not an explanation, and that's okay. They don't have to. No, they do explain. You see, here's the thing. If you're looking at it too superficially, Luke, the purpose of the universe is ultimately for God's pleasure. That is why the universe exists. Neonormie says, the best Klingon was bald General Chang. You should look into streaming Klingon Academy sometimes. Really good and has cinematics with Chang as your teacher. Actually, I did like General Chang a lot. I actually think, though, I like Counselor Gorkon a lot. In fact, all the Klingons from Star Trek 6 were freaking badass. I love them. But Klingon Academy, I don't have it, and I don't know if you can get it to run on a, so I don't know where we can get it, and I don't know if it's a game that I would enjoy or not. If Sunday school is like when I was a kid, I might not have minded attending. Oh, Sunday school is like this when I was a kid. Yeah. Well, Stanley, that's a shame, but yeah, unfortunately, many churches, the dogmatic thing that I was talking about earlier, that's a big problem in the modern church. Kongu says, good morning. How you doing, my friend? Peter says, slight change of topic. Endgame, here's a thought. What if Hulk and Thor changed moments, Andy Trigger? Thor snaps and Hulk fights Thanos. I could see that, but honestly, I do think that could have worked, except that Thor, I think, needed the redemption that he got from the fight with Thanos. Peter says, yes, tardigrades hibernate on Trigger. I'm certain they can. Well, it's not that they can't hibernate, but here's the thing. Hibernating for a year, a decade, even a century is one thing. But hibernating for millions or billions of years, I would dare say, is an impossibility. Biological tissue does not last that long, even under the best of circumstances. Under laboratory conditions, we cannot preserve biological tissue for more than a couple of years. And so I find it very difficult to believe that tardigrades could hibernate for billions of years. Luke says, I always consider panspermia to be dumb. It's a nice idea. It simply doesn't add up with everything you know. I agree, Luke. I think it's kind of it's a neat idea. It would be a way for any life out there in the universe to be related to us. But yeah, it's kind of like no, it seems so unlike, because you would have to have some kind of catastrophic event on some other planet in order to get the microbes onto a meteor. You know, either that or some super advanced society said, hey, let's take a rock, sprinkle some microbes on it, and shoot it out into space. In a couple million years, we'll seed life somewhere. Richie says, sounds like this new Space News server you guys set up is a real pain in the ass. A lot of lagging, server reboots, getting kicked out. Well, it is kind of a pain, but it's also a lot of fun. And that's the tricky part, is that obviously we're still learning some of this stuff. Like Cinnabon and Wesley have never run a server like this before. And they're doing a bang-up job, to be honest with you. Yes, we've had some lag issues, and we've had some other issues that I think some of them might have been caused by people in the game, where other issues might just be because we didn't set up the game properly and stuff like that. And some of it is just internet traffic and, lag that happens all the time. But yeah. But the bottom line, though, Richie, is it is a ridiculously fun game. And I can't wait for the war to break out. Yosef throws in €2. Thank you so much, Yosef, and says, just join Klingon or Jesus cosplay. What a spin. Yes, I am the Klingon Jesus. That's what it is. To our surprise, we found that although nearby supernovas or large asteroid impacts would be catastrophic for people, tardigrades could be unaffected. I would find that highly unlikely, Peter. I mean, unless the tardigrades are made out of neutronium, they're not going to survive a nearby supernova. Unless by nearby they mean 10 light years away. And yes, I saw you put a tardigrade link in the Discord. I'm not going to read it right now, but I'm skeptical about that. But even if you could prove, and besides that, and here's the thing, Peter, nobody, and I mean nobody, is arguing that we're all descended from tardigrades. Luke says, first of all, evolution is just an intrinsic property of life demonstrated by a guy named Darwin, full stop. Biogenesis, however, is a theoretical and is yet to be demonstrated. Yes, I said that, Luke. Were you not listening? Wesley says, this is interesting to hear your perspective. Thank you. I have two creators, my mom and my dad. Well, that's nice. That's true, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about who made you. We're talking about where did life come from. Biogenesis has gained traction over time for various reasons. One, we've detected organic molecules in space. Two, we've detected basic organic chemistry occurring in nebula. Next comment. 3, we've conducted experiments to reproduce the conditions under which life is expected to have occurred and revealed the presence of amino acid formation. 4, we've managed to produce what chemists call protocells, chemical constructs that can self-replicate and have some properties of life, but not all of them at once. Okay. However, 5, that requires external influence for it to happen. And that's the thing. It's not like if we just throw this mixture into the lab, the next day it's got amino acids. No, they have to very carefully manipulate it to make that happen. That's the part they leave out, is that it requires an intelligent person behind the scenes to make it happen. But, Richie says, believers see the conflict too. They refuse to accept evolution, thinking it changes the existence of God. It does not. Oh, absolutely, Richie. I'm not saying that it's all one-sided. That there are Christians that will take a fight against science because they disagree with evolution. I only disagree with one aspect of evolution, and that is as far as having a problem with it. And that is the statement that it is unguided or random, because that is an unwarranted assumption. You can simply say, it's perfectly reasonable to say that life changes over time due to random mutation, or I'm sorry, due to mutation and natural selection. However, to throw random in there, that's trying to imply that there is nothing behind it. However, that is not the scientific way. The scientific way is to be agnostic, to not assume that there is or is not a God. And therefore, if you're not going to assume that there is or is not a guiding force behind it all, then you simply say mutation and selection. You don't say random mutation. You don't say unguided mutation. You say mutation. What is your thought on religions as a human construct, faith as well? Well, religion in and of itself is a human construct. However, it's what that religion represents that's important. You know, like God did not create the Experience Community Church. That guy right there did, Corey Tremble, right? So our church was the brainchild of this man who came up with a great way to get together and celebrate our beliefs in God. That being said, we didn't create God. We just created a methodology for worshiping him. Wesley says, you say religion gives us an explanation to why the universe works. Science, both from religion and non-religious scientists, explains how things work. Yes. I said that a few, I think a little bit before you came on, Wesley. But yes, that's absolutely what I'm saying, is that theism is about the why, science is about the what. Or the how. What chemists call protocells, chemical constructs that can self-replicate. Oh, I already read that. Well, for tardigrades surviving millions of years in a vacuum matrix, we have no source materials. I know, but the thing is, we also know that as far as, this is the problem, Peter, is that so far we have yet to be able to preserve anything for anywhere near that length of time. We could still catch Omanamu, the interstellar asteroid. I have no idea what you're talking about. Hey, maybe God is a tardigrade. Yeah, giant blue one that teleports you around. Okay, I got breakfast. What'd I miss? Oh, we were just talking about you, Darren. Hope you have a good breakfast, my friend. Luke says, Andrew, no, it's not external action. We've just reproduced the conditions we believed to be part of the primordial earth for that. For protocells, it's about throwing some, it's just about throwing some chosen chemicals. All right, Luke. I would have to see that to believe it. And I would have to see what exactly are they saying they believe the earth was like to create these conditions. Because I've heard some pretty ludicrous ideas about what earth was like, when they say that life began. That being said, coming up with protocells or amino acids is a long ways away from coming up with life. And I believe you know that. Simply coming, if you can manufacture, and you could even manufacture like, hair follicles or whatever, and you can create the right conditions so that all these pieces come together and happen to work for you. Awesome. Does that mean that it's likely that that would happen in quote unquote the real world? No, it just means that you can do it. We can manufacture cars by the millions. Doesn't mean that cars exist in nature. And it just means that we can do it. But then we have the ability to manipulate our environment and to tweak it and to make it just right for these perfect ideal conditions to happen. And I have a problem with that, Luke. I have a problem with saying, see, because we could reproduce it in a lab means that it happened. No, it just means that you can produce it in a lab. You have to come up with, where's the evidence that this is how it went down? That's what I'm looking for. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. And I think that eventually we'll know the truth. But the problem is when is that going to happen? Has YouTube been causing you grief recently? Yes, Kronos, all day yesterday. I was about ready. I seriously, and he's not here right now, but Mr. Miles could testify to the fact that I was this close to closing my YouTube account. That's how frustrated I was. I actually said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to delete the account. I'm done. But it looks like I got past that hurdle. Luke says, enter at each other and see what happens. Zero influence. The chemists leave them alone. The goal is to find out if some combination of chemicals meeting each other at random can give birth to life. Yes, and they have not done it. They've created protocells, as you say, but they have not created life. Now, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. But the thing is that I am not going to be suddenly say, oh, well, then I guess God's out of the way, just because, even if the scientists are able to completely, okay, if we throw a pinch of ammonia and a little bit of carbon and some salt and bake at 350 for 20 minutes and bam, we have a basic single-celled life form, right? Let's say they manage to pull that off. Does that mean God doesn't exist? No, not at all. In fact, all that means is that under the right circumstances, you can create basic single-celled life. Now, I don't find that all that extraordinary because according to the Bible, God created life. Well, God had to do something to create life. It doesn't say, yeah, sure, it kind of describes him making Adam from the mud or whatever, but as far as life in general, it just doesn't say specifically how he did it other than that he spoke the universe into existence, which, by the way, I think is an interesting choice of words. But if he simply created the same circumstances that these scientists are creating in a laboratory, same results. All the scientists are doing is replicating what God did. And so that's the point, is that even if, and this is the problem with the whole debate, this is why there is no debate between science and religion. The only thing science can show you is how something can happen. It doesn't necessarily explain why it happened. So, if you say, for example, that you take these 5 chemicals and mix them together and you get life. Great. That's awesome. You know what that doesn't say? That 5 billion years ago, or whatever the time frame was for the first life on Earth, that someone other than man did exactly that. That's the problem. And let's see. Wow, please don't do that. Guess I missed out on the explanation area. That's all right, Kronos. It was just the stupid copyright system. I have re-uploaded my Galaxy Quest Part 5 video 5 times. So when you see the video, you will notice a lot of little censored sections because of all the DMCAs that I had to fight off. And it really got to the point where I was like, this is not worth it. Anyway, so Luke says to Wesley and me, it doesn't manage to create life. It experiments with the association of chemicals and hopes to find a combination of few molecules that work. Right. But here's the problem. That in and of itself is a violation of the scientific method. You don't hope to do anything in science. You observe and record, and that is it. But the problem is that science, in some cases nowadays, has a freaking agenda. And I have a problem with that. Science is looking for something to happen, and then they find it. Wow. Well, if you're looking for a very specific answer, you're going to find that answer. Did somebody say religion? Yes. I have multiple questions. Well, Raiders, shoot. Wesley says, hey, Trigger, the goal of these is not to disprove God or whatnot, it's to discover how life occurs, biogenesis, nothing more. I understand. Wesley says, I agree with your final point. We don't know what early Earth was like. Maybe it was not how current scientists are predicting at this time. Well, that's the problem. Yeah, the only way we'd really know is time machine. And let me see, where was I? If you close your account, I swear I'll unsub. Nice. And yes, Bird, I saw your message on Skype right after I said what I just said. If I close your account, I already read that. BIRDOPREY suggesting the Raiders asked. Raiders says, I have so any first. Not sure what you mean, Raiders. Luke says, yes, hence why they failed partially. Raiders wants to know, is this an actual live stream? No, Raiders, this is a very clever computer-generated recording. I do not know, I'm not a real person. I'm just a computer program. So the fact that I can see that your username is the Raiders and that your icon is like a black circle with a inverted triangle and green, and I'm not sure what that is because it's too small for my computer eyes to see it. No, this is totally fake. Think of the moon landing. That's all it is. And by the way, yeah, and I know Bird said this already, but if you want me to read your comment for sure, make sure you put @anti-tricker at the beginning of the comment with a dash in it, just like it's spelt where BIRDOPREY put that comment, because that way it'll highlight on my screen and it's easier for me to see. Wesley says, Andrew, I'm with Kronos. You close your channel, I'm unsubbing. All right, I will try to remember that. Raider says, Ori recording live. No, this is just a recording. Yeah, it's all fake. Do you mean 5,000 years ago? And let's see. And the Raider says, I guess I'll go to a real stream. Okay. Bye. I'm confused, Raiders. So you really think that this is fake? I'm really confused by the Raiders. But if I'm beginning to think Raiders is just a bot. That's probably what it is. I'll bet you the Raiders is a bot that shows up, puts those comments in. Notice that he didn't answer anybody that talked to him. So that's interesting. So Raiders did not interact with anybody and is accusing me of being a recording. Even though the whole time that the Raiders was here, I was reading comments. So, whatever. That's the problem. Science is a tool, and like any tool, it's only as good as the faith it's used in. Well, in a sense, you're right. In that, as science needs to, agnostic is a scientific term, and it needs to be taken seriously, and it's not. In modern science, we tend to, we have an agenda behind science now, and that is horrible. Absolutely horrible. It taints the results of any experiments. If you actually have an agenda behind what you're doing, then it's going to screw up the results. And I think that we need to get back to true agnostic science. Anyway, what are you talking about? There's no agenda. The scientists' hopes are not motivation. They're hopes for the experiment. The experiment itself is to observe what happens. Actually, Luke, if you look at, you watch a lot of these you look at interviews with these scientists, you look at documentaries about the science, and no, they'll say, oh yeah, we were hoping to get this. Oh yeah, we're hoping to find this. Oh yeah, we're looking for this. Not, oh, we're looking to see what we find. We're looking for something specific. That's not science. Science doesn't have an end goal. If you have an end goal, then you're not conducting science. Okay, no deals yet for Sony, Spider-Man, and MCU Trigger, but what I'm hearing is Sony will give up 25% for Feige's future involvement. I personally think that Sony doesn't want Spider-Man in the MCU. I think that's why this all came about. Because I think Sony thinks that they can make more money with Spider-Man on their own, not thinking about the fact that they've effed it up twice. Good morning, says Aaron. Just stopping by to say hi. Hope you're feeling well. Also, your hair is very Klingon. Real Klingon. Thank you. Yes, I am a real Klingon. These are not implants. In a universe with black holes, I don't think there's a reason for a goal in life at all. To quote Altered States, the absolute truth is there is no absolute truth. I disagree with you on that. There is absolute truth. The problem is we don't know it. And that's the thing that people need to admit they don't know. And the hardest thing, this is the hardest thing for both atheists and Christians and people of all faiths. The hardest thing in the world is to admit you could be wrong. And if you can't, I can proudly say that I could be wrong about even though I absolutely believe God exists, I absolutely believe in the Christian philosophy, I fully admit I could be wrong. And if you are not able to say that, you are being intellectually dishonest, because we are flawed human beings and nothing more. Anti-Trigger admits Turtistani is all fake, no real people. No, I just admitted that this live stream is fake. And 5% for Pepper and Happy. That's the thing. I think that it's too bad that the whole Sony MCU falling apart thing. I do blame Sony, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is we're not going to have Spider-Man in the MCU, and that's a real shame. Aaron says Raider bots. Yes. Raider says that's because you didn't say anything. What are you talking about? I've been reading comments this whole time. The reason took me a minute is because, like, that comment you wrote at 9:18, it is now 9:22. Yes, I'm not, you know what? Because I'm not a robot, I can't read so fast. It would be boring if all I did was read the comments. Is this what you want, the Raiders? That's because you didn't say anything. The Neo Normie, are you absolutely sure about that? Antchecker is one of the holodeck characters. All you are. You're all doing great. Only a few glitches. Stan Lee, No, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually answering what people say, and so I can't answer it as fast as you guys enter the comments. It's that simple. Now, you are welcome to hang out with us, but it's not an ultra delay. It's that unlike many other streamers, I try to read all the comments, or at least as many as I possibly can. And so that's all it is. And so there has to be a delay. And believe me, Raiders, what you do not want to do is go to a BIRDOPREY 5 stream where it takes them a half an hour to read your comment. No, don't get me wrong. I'm just kidding around. BIRDOPREY 5 is a great dude. You should subscribe to him. But if, taking a minute to read your comments, how is that a problem? I mean, sure, if you're on a stream where there's only 3 people watching, then yeah, that's easy. But if you're on a stream, like right now, we have like almost 40 people. That's not a huge stream, but it's enough to where there's so many comments I can't read them in real time. And, sometimes we get as many as 100, 110 on this stream, and I get way behind. How does a YouTube bot work? I don't know. With science, just think of how much of the world we can't detect or measure. Well, that's the interesting thing. Science cannot... the problem with science is that it can only deal with that which you can measure. If you can't measure it, it's not scientific. That's why I thought it was just a recording. I guess the stream is ultra delayed. Don't blame me for that. I don't blame you. I'm just saying you need to understand how YouTube works, my friend. The Raiders, beep boop. We are all recordings, beep boop. Andrew, I was talking about scientific experiment you don't know about. Anyway, anyhow. Now that it's out of the way, let's move to the one thing you prefer we discuss with atheists. Okay. I can't wait to hear this. Stan says, we can only see an extremely limited spectrum of light with our eyes. With science, so we can see more of the light spectrum, but just imagine what else is around that we can't detect. Well, exactly. And that's like an interesting idea that, like, for example, there are many atheists that like to scoff at the idea of miracles or supernatural or anything like that, right? So tell me, what empirical evidence do you have that the strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, gravity, and electromagnetism is that it? I think are all there is as far as energy, right? Or forces, I should say. What evidence do you have that that's all there is? Just because you haven't found anything else means that there is nothing else. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Just 1,000 years ago, there was no evidence of electromagnetism, except for as a bad example. But they didn't know what gravity was, right? They didn't know what there was zero evidence of the strong or weak nuclear forces. All they knew is what they could see. Now we have these basic fundamental forces. How do we know there's not more? And the divine could be one of them, or the ultimate force behind them all. In science, a minimum good faith is reporting on failed hypothesis. Bad faith is repeating it until you get the result you want and only publishing that data set. Yeah, we unfortunately see that sometimes. Very true. Scientific agnosticism is super important. Being skeptical of science is especially important if it takes a lot of time to know anything. Yeah, I agree. I think that scientists should be skeptics, but they need to be extremely skeptical of their own results. And, it's like, I think it was Einstein or something that said that, if you successfully do something 1,000,000 times and you disprove it once, it's disproven, right? And yet, that's not how science works anymore. Absolute truth corrupts absolutely. Don't know about that. Often wrong, anti-trekker. Or things we don't even know or look for often. Okay. Commander Ironwolf is in the house. Says, hey, how you doing, my friend? And let's see. Leslie says to Luke, scientists in this century absolutely have an agenda. It's so clear to see this. I do think that some, now, don't get me wrong, I don't think that all scientists have an agenda, but I do think that many of them do. For example, Dawkins has a freaking agenda, right? And if you deny that Richard Dawkins has an agenda, then you're fooling yourself. All I know is that I don't know. All I know is that I don't know nothing. Well, the second part is a double negative, which means you do know something. It's to make money, and something pay, and others don't. If you're talking about science, unfortunately, there is a lot of money in science nowadays. It's all about getting that grant. I have to say, I can understand why Spider-Man fans want him out of the MCU. In the MCU, he's a beta character, while in his own comic, he was an independent loner. I still think that he's better in the MCU than not in the MCU. Just Google protocells and you'll see what it's about. Now, moving on, let's debate the divine considered to be the creator. First, please present what you believe it. I'll present why I don't. Why you believe it. Okay. Well, first of all, logically speaking, there is no such thing as an actualized infinite. So the universe cannot have existed for an infinite amount of time, nor can it be infinitely large. However, they did come from somewhere. Now, we currently refer to the origin of the universe as the Big Bang, and people speculate as to one way or another how the Big Bang came about, whether or not it be colliding brains or a cyclical universe or a myriad of other ideas. The problem is that they all simply go back to the problem of infinite regress, that you cannot get to an original source, which is an absolute necessity in order to avoid the logical contradiction of an actualized infinite. So, if you require a creator, then you also require that that creator be able to act independently and arbitrarily without the use of time. The only way that and otherwise you would need to have a prior force to act upon it. That's the whole thing. Like if you look at Newton's, an object at rest will stay at rest until it's acted upon by an outside force, right? An object in motion will stay in motion until it's acted upon by an outside force. You need something that can be the origin of that force. The only things in the universe that can act without being acted upon are living things. Therefore, the only thing that could have started the entire universe is a living thing. Hence, God. That's an awkward way of putting it, but that's my basic argument. Oh my God, Raider loves the auto stream. Probably used to channels my size. That could be, if you go to a lot of smaller channels, then it's easy to keep up. Like, and that's fun. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking small channels because I like hanging out on small live streams sometimes where it's like like Rambling Canuck. I don't get to be on his streams that often, but when I do, it's cool because you type in a comment and he immediately sees it, and that's fun. But the, BIRDOPREY, there's not that many people there, but then he takes an hour to get to your comment anyway because BIRDOPREY is an idiot. But I still love BIRDOPREY. Anyway, hey, sometimes BIRDOPREY gets in the zone and gets behind in the comments. We love that about it. Yeah. That depends, Anna Trigger. There have been no information really about Spider-Man. Sony just said it was disappointed. Well, I still think Sony wants Spider-Man in their universe because Venom made more money than they thought it would, and I think that they see dollar signs in a Spider-Verse. The problem is that Sony has seen these same dollar signs before, and they failed twice at it. They wanted to build up a Spider-Verse out of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. That's why they insisted on putting all this crap into Spider-Man 3 that fell apart. They wanted to set up for Sandman and Venom and all that stuff. They wanted, they were trying to expand out, but that failed. Then they relaunched with Amazing Spider-Man, and guess what? They did the same exact thing in Spider-Man 2. They were trying to set up for the Sinister Six. They threw all this crap into the movie and it fell apart. And they're just going to do it again. I guarantee you that if they continue the Tom Holland Spider-Man, but only under the Sony banner and Marvel has nothing to do with it, they're going to do a trifecta. Once again, they're going to cram too much crap into a Spider-Man movie and it's going to fall apart and they're going to reboot again. And BIRDOPREY says to the Raiders, it's possible you're way behind. Refreshing page might help. That's true. Raiders says, terrible. Okay. Andrew, do you believe that the city of Atlantis is a real place and is lost somewhere? Yes, the city of Atlantis, of course, is the lost city of Atlantis where everybody will turn into mer people because of the Coca-Cola bottling plant. That's probably the initial dead deal offered, Anti-Tracker. It makes sense for both, not just financially. I tell you, it does make sense for both to have Spider-Man in the MCU, but they're being dumb. Stan Lee says, dark matter, gravitational waves, things, action, science. I heard that we can't really see things in 4K. Yeah, I've heard people make that argument, but you know what? I'm sorry. I can see the difference between a 1080p video and a 4K video. Bacteria, viruses, science. Steve Shives, discussion with Atheist Anti-Tracker. I've actually talked to Steve Shives a few times on that subject, and yeah, well, I won't give my opinion because I have too much respect for Steve than to tell you what I think of him. They were just too small to detect before microscopes. Yes. And depends on how far you're away from the thing. Well, the thing is, yeah, I think that when you look at, you know, real life compared to a screen, right? The sharper the image on the screen, I think that some people, it just depends on the individual. Some people can see the difference, other people can't. And it's not just a matter of 20/20 vision. It's a matter of, I don't know how to describe it really, but it's just it's a sense that there's something different about the picture. But yeah. Mrs. Anti-Tracker says, hi guys, babe, you have a half an hour before you need to leave. Bye guys. Yes, I do need to leave in a little bit. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it. No, she's not feeling well. Unfortunately, that's the problem. She's not going to church this week, but I'm taking Joshua. We didn't go last night because she was feeling sick. We were hoping she'd feel better today. Yeah, Operation Ivy didn't have the best grammar. Not sure what you mean there. Luke says Dawkins didn't say the lab. He does debates, philosophy, activism, etc. Of course, he has an agenda, but he isn't this isn't a scientific agenda. He has a personal agenda. Luke, that's a load of crap. Read his books. Okay. Dawkins does the same. This is a problem in science. Dawkins can't tell the difference between science and philosophy. So when he's talking about one, he's talking about both. Read The Selfish Gene. To me, God doesn't answer the dilemma either. If we're living entirely outside the universe that he created, that he comes from somewhere, rinse and repeat, unless he's uncreated. I explained that a couple of times. God's origin is, in my humble opinion, in the Bible. Spider-Man will flop without the MCU. I agree. Sounds more like the lost city of Atlanta. That's exactly what I meant. Go deeper into the rant. What is beyond time, space, energy, intelligence, personhood? Good question. All right, so, and Thomas Potts finally makes it. Good to see you, my friend, right when I'm trying to end this thing.
I got it! Great hit!
Joe says, hi, God, from Trek 5. Oh, Star Trek 5. Ugh. And Super Chat number 5 in honor of Star Trek 5.
In deepest squat, on coldest seat, bite your lip and grab 3 sheets. In brownest night and daylight too, beware my power, Brown Lantern's poo! Hey, didn't we do this joke already?
Sorry about that. I don't know why that one was so loud. But it shouldn't be next time. There we go. All right, so I do need to wrap it up, guys, because I do need to get ready for church. But I do want to thank you all for hanging out with me. You guys are the absolute best. For those of you that are patron supporters or subscribers on antitracker.com, I'm going to try to get the video up momentarily so that you can see the final chapter of the Galaxy Quest review. For the rest of you, it'll be available tomorrow morning. And, you know, by the way, Dan, Venom 2 is Star Woody Harrelson. Yes, that I knew for, you know, because that was the whole point of that cameo at the end of Venom 1. But what can I say? You guys are freaking awesome, but I got to run. Take care. And of course, the credits didn't roll correctly because why the heck would they? It's just like a thing.